Yep.
Looks like I have some echo. 1 minute. Okay, let's start. As I talked on previous demo, we are going to have MSI-beta release at 19-20 June. So general updates from us. During this week, we processed and merged almost all pull requests from Perugia. Also, we fixed all of failed API functional tests, but some of pull requests still not merged with some fixes. Also, we worked on failed functional test. And now we have only one failed test. I skipped it. This test is not related to some problem with functionality. It looks like problem in some environment, with problem with Travis. And I am working on this right now, and I believe I will finish to Monday. As I said, we close to release, and I believe it will be more great to see our status instead to he. And first, according to our agenda, Igor Minyailo will share Burndown chat.
Hi guys, let me share my screen. So here is the Burndown and the current status of MSI project. And we are pretty close to the release, which we are going to make on a coming Monday. So June 18, it's gonna be a release of all the minimal viable product functionality. And for example, you can see that on a roadmap, on a MSI roadmap. So here you for example can see that all the stories and all the feature set which we were going to implement in the scope of the MVP functionality of MSI are finished and delivered. So currently we have actually the Burndown is open, so everybody can come on Zen Hub to MSI project and see the Burndown. So you can go following the link Zen Hub MSI board from the wiki, and in the report just choose the Burndown report. After that, the Burndown would be built for you, and you can see the current status and current ticket in progress. So now we have just 14 story points, which supposed to be delivered till Monday. So we have still 2.5 days. And as Valery also mentioned, most of the tasks which we have created here, pull request already created, and we are verify this pull request now, and I believe this pull request would be merged during the weekend, especially taking into account that we have 2 days long hackathon in before the Meet Magento Germany, and there would be quite a lot of Magento developers who will participate in Magento Contribution Day in Leipzig, and we expect that these developers will help us to finalize and finish our backlog and make the progress get to the 0 open story pouring points, and to finalize backlog of MSI MVP. For us, it is really symbolic that we run the project a year ago. Actually, we ran it in the same place. We ran it in Leipzig before Meet Magento Germany during the hackathon organized by FireGenta, and we are finishing the project and we are releasing it at the same place a year after it was started. So pretty big event for us, and this is actually the status currently, and the currently ticket which should be on process and be on updated now. This is all from my side. I believe it would be more interesting update from Alessandra and from Riccardo, who will show you the real demo and the stories which were implemented at the time of the contribution day in Perugia. And after that, Vladimir Kublitsky will describe you the process of releasing and the metadata package which going to be released for Composer. That's all from my side. I'm stop sharing the screen.
Thank you, Igor. I see Anton join us. Maybe Anton and Mark, do you have some questions related to our Burndown chart?
No, I don't have any.
Yeah, usually people don't have questions to Burndown chart when it looks good.
Great. So our next presenter is Alessandro Ronchi, who worked with us on Perugia Contribution Day, and he will demonstrate on X left functionality.
Hello. Yes, let me show you what happens when we enable the only X left threshold functionality. We currently have this just duffel bag with 10 quantities, and I already made an order and ordered 5 of them, so I have 5 left in stock. You can see here the reservation that reserves the 5 quantity for this duffel bag. Let me show you this thing in the catalog list. So here is our bag. We have 10 of these, and sellable quantity is correctly shown as 5 because the 5 reservations are taken into account. If I enable the only X left threshold, let me save the config. At this moment, I don't have my modification active, just to show you a regression that we had to fix. Just let me clear the cache and refresh the duffel bag. And here things seems to work pretty well, as long as the page is loaded. The only 5 left label is correctly shown here. But actually, there is a problem because let me show you that, for example, if in the configuration of this product, I enable a min quantity, also known as the stock threshold level. So let me show you that if I decide that, for example, I want this product to be out of stock unless I have 2 of them. Let me save the product. Let me also show you that this value is taken into account in the saleable quantity now. And this is one of the changes that I did, because we have 10 minus 5 reservation minus 2, which is the stock threshold. We decided it is correct to give the merchant the idea of what is really saleable here. Let's see what happens here. And the only left message, well, we have a regression here. The minus 2 is counted twice. So we expected to have only 3 left, but we have only 1. And this is a regression introduced by MSI itself, because in the code that counts the quantity left for this product, we already take into account the min quantity, and then we I show you, this is the legacy code. We already get the stock quantity, but here MSI already takes into account the min quantity, and then it's subtracted again. So we pluginize this method to do the correct calculation. What is more, we also realized that the message is visible even if backorders are are enabled. Let me show you this. This is not due to MSI. This is an issue we had also in legacy code. Let me show you that I enable also backorders for this product. So enable and save. I refresh the page and nothing changes, because even if recorders are allowed, we don't want to see this message, but we see it again. So let me enable my plugins here. Let me flush the cache. Let me refresh this page. And now we don't see the message because we have the backorders enabled. So this correctly applies this logic. And let's go to the advanced inventory and remove the backorders and save the product. What we expect now is to see again the message, this time with the correct quantity, which is 3. Remember, it was 10 minus 5 reserved minus 2, that is the minimum quantity. Let's refresh this page, and indeed we have only 3 left of this product. This code has already been merged, but a functional test broke. That's probably the one that Valerie mentioned before. It's a problem with the test that we're fixing. That's all from my side. If there are any questions, I'm open to them.
Okay, it looks like there are no open questions. Thank you, Alessandro.
Thank you.
Our next presenter is Riccardo. During a few last weeks, Riccardo created a lot of pull requests, and looks like he became our top contributor of last month. And what is interesting, he fixed bugs not only from MSI side. He created a pull request to Magento core, and looks like we fixed it generally in Magento, this problem. So Riccardo, please share screen and share your status.
Yes, okay, I'm sharing now. Wait just a moment. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so yes, I created a bunch of pull requests, so we will start from the most interesting ones. I think we can start from, let me check. Yeah, probably from this one. But basically, this was a quite simple pull request, because what happened is that we had some mess in the API names, because usually in Magento we are not using singular names, we're using plurals. And here I had to change a lot of, so basically this was just a code monkey pull request, but I think it's quite interesting. And what I discovered actually while running this pull request is that we had a bug inside the Magento core that Valerie was explaining before. So I discovered that depending on the line ending code you're using when coding your classes, you may have problems while running the API. So this should be fixed in my pull request that I did in the core. So basically, you should use always the Unix way, so the Unix end of line. Otherwise, you may have problems in recognizing the PHP doc in the interfaces. It was quite funny to find this kind of bug, because it was very hard. Yes, another one very interesting was this one. So there was an issue in which, that you probably know, so when you rename a website in MSI, basically this breaks all the grids for the sources. And I discovered basically a problem for data consistency, because the website code was not updated in every table. So because as you probably know, we are not using foreign keys, so we have no control over changes in other tables. What I did with Igor during the project contribution was to create a plugin directly in the website. Let me check where is that. Yeah, should be this one. So basically, we apply a plugin in the website, and before it says an around. Well, actually, this is another. I'm sorry, wrong one. So basically, we created an around plugin for the website, and when this is saved, okay, here we go. This is the right code. So we check the previous code, we check the new code, and we update the sales channel website link table. And that's it. Of course, we had to use an around save plugin instead of an observer or before and after plugin, because we had to know the previous state and the state after the save. And of course, all the integration tests connected.
Could you repeat it? So why? I think we discussed it, but I forgot it. So why do we have website code in the table?
Well, actually, was in the table that was connecting. I don't. I have to show you because I don't remember exactly. I don't know if Igor can help me to remember actually.
So
what was it?
In MSI website, we use website as one of the sales channel, and it was decided that we rely on a natural identity. So we rely on a website code, but not website ID.
I don't remember the table name actually. If you remember.
And actually, we stuck with a similar issue like updating natural identity, for example, for product, like updating SQ. So actually, here was an issue with updating website code, actually break a linkage between the website and the stock. So that was the idea of that was actually the main request of the bug, and Riccardo showed how to fix it.
Okay, so basically we have a website code in the sales channel table for quicker lookups to avoid joins or second queries, right?
Yep.
Okay, here
because the website structure changes a lot less often than it's read, we want to do it. So small fragility we introduce is data duplication that we'll have to synchronize, but we are synchronizing it on. And Riccardo, where did you put the plugin? Was it on repository?
Wait, don't remember.
That's the resource model for the website. We don't have repository for website.
Yeah, exactly. It was on the and. Yeah, because the problem actually was the duplication of the website. Because when you were updating the website code, basically the system was creating a new entry inside this table. So that was a problem. And since this entry was not connected to any real website, the website repository was giving one error. Well, when it was triggered by the data provider of the grid tables. That was the issue. So we had two ways to fix it. One was to just ignore this exception, but it was not a great idea. So we decided to make this kind of synchronization between the website and the link table itself.
Mm-hmm.
Does it make sense?
Yeah. I just wanted to make sure I understand why we have duplication, and the reason makes sense.
Okay.
Sorry for interruption. Can I please ask you to show you your pull request with the mass delete operation? I believe this work would be interesting to Anton because we don't have similar APIs in the core. So mass REST mass delete operation. And that we decided to use post instead of delete.
Yeah, sure. So the problem was basically a wrong implementation of the delete method. But delete was not accepting, of course, a body. Well, actually, it is not forbidden, but I think it's not the best practice. And it was a mass delete operation, so we couldn't rely on a single parameter we could inject inside the URL. And what I decided to do is to create a new call, because the previous one was simple. For example, let's take this one, was stock source link, and calling with delete was deleting, of course. But I decided to create a new call using post method instead of delete, so we can attach a body and send one list of items to delete. So this was the main issue. So we decided to change from a delete method to a post method.
Yeah, so the main reason is the mass operation for the delete, because currently in Magento, all the way a web API which precedes the delete method actually apply for the single entity. That's why the ID of this entity is passed in as a parameter, as a part of the URI. But as soon as we apply mass operation, actually there was a possibility to specify like many identities in the scope of the URI, but actually this is not what supposed to be represented as a URI, because URI is supposed to be an identity for a particular entity. That's why we.
If it's we could follow the other solution here would be to apply delete operation on filtered list of entities. So you have in this case it would be inventory, source, items, and then you do search criteria where you filter source items and you apply delete operation on those entities, and that would be also a solution.
Yeah. But you have to be dependent on a search criteria in that way.
Oh, well, here my understanding is that you are still dependent on some such different form of search criteria, right?
Well, actually, in this way, you can just provide a list of items identifier. So
yeah,
you're not.
So it's also a search criteria, right? So conceptually, it's a filter, some kind of filter where you filter a sublist and then delete that sublist.
Yeah, so my only concern, because we discussed about this option. My only concern was to have a too long URL. So basically, imagine you want to delete, okay, this is not the case. I mean, in general, you want to delete 1,000 of entities.
Yeah. Okay, and by the way, Eugene, so did you participate in the discussion of this item? Because it has it intersects with bulk APIs. I understand that it's probably the difference is that you are the repository operation is executed once, hopefully, right? So it's only one operation for 1,000 entities, or do you call repository multiple times?
Yeah.
Or the repository or source model save operation multiple times.
Well, actually, of course, if you're going to use search criteria, of course, we can restore the delete method.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand. So now with this operation, when you filter the list and you delete multiple entities, do you call delete operation multiple times, or do you call operation once with multiple?
Of course, once.
Once.
In MSI, we always call. So we have an API. We have a mass API for all the operations we have. That's why we make just one call, and actually this one call translated in one SQL delete query.
Okay, so it's okay, understood. This is great, and it finalizes our story of mass of bulk APIs, because we had bulk API for multiple operation calls in single HTTP request, and this adds a single call for multiple operations. But I think we also discussed the design for such APIs in that epic of bulk APIs, Eugene, right? Am I mistaken? And it was described, I think, there.
We discussed, but I don't see how it's intersects. So there we were talking more of a situation where you have request which supports just one entity, and you'd like to send a bulk of entities in such an endpoint.
Yeah.
So you introduce a separate.
So we have two types of bulk operations. One type of bulk operation was implemented in bulk API Epic, where you call a REST endpoint to call operation multiple times, right? And this one type, which is implemented here, is where you call operation once with multiple entities, right?
Yeah.
And I remember that we discussed both operations, and I thought that we discussed the design of API endpoints for both operations, but I might be mistaken. It was a couple months ago, right?
So we discussed that first requires framework support, and that should be implemented, and that had been implemented. And second, does not require any special framework support, like this type which we see on the screen. It's already supported. And if you'd like to send more requests, you just use regular means.
Well, it is supported. It is supported in a form where you use post operation. So it's somewhat. So it's not problematic. It's a good implementation. It will work great. It just one thing that might some REST idealist might not like is the fact that it uses such design requires using post operations for any entity. And I think we discussed it, but I might be mistaken. Anyway, this looks good, and we can discuss it later on grooming, and especially on bulk APIs.
Yeah, and I just want to mention that another cons with passing the search criteria was that according to specification of a RESTful architecture, that the lead URI actually supposed to represent an entity, so it's supposed to be a URI. But
but from that perspective, you can say that entity is a list so list is an entity, and
but in this case, you need to create that entity, get identity of that entity, and afterwards you need to proceed with the delete query. So
why do you need to get the identity of that? That one I don't get. So my understanding from REST perspective and from HTTP perspective.
I got your point that you can consider it like a value object and remove it like by definition of the entity and specifying all the fields.
Yeah. Again, I don't have strong opinion that we should implement it this way, but this is an interesting topic, and if we haven't discussed it, I had some feeling that we discussed it already. But let's set up a separate call with Riccardo and with whoever from community who wants to join this. Let's discuss it. I'm sorry if I missed the grooming where you discussed it, but I think it makes sense to we'll do final discussion and decide on how we add such operations in the future.
No worries, Antonio. You always get an excuse from the MSI guys.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So let's go back now this one. Okay, and this is probably one of the most interesting from my point of view, and it is, I think, the last one. So basically, we had a problem in MSI because, as you probably know, when you use the legacy API, the updates for the stock are going to be connected with the default source. But here we had a problem because when you, for example, are in the product page, in the admin HTML page, and you try to save something, a product, you got the default stock updated automatically because the save is calling under the hood the same legacy method as before. So basically, what we had is that we had all the products connected to the default source, even if we wanted something different. So products connected to other sources. And the most annoying part was actually that the source item entity was created and then deleted. So basically, you had the increment ID going every time you save the product. You have an increment in the table. So we had to find a solution because this was a kind of saving section at the end, because we were pluginizing the legacy stock to update the default source, and vice versa. So it was a problem. And we decided to rely on the initial stock status. So what I did is to create a filter, basically in the original plugin. Let me try. Okay. So this is the class pluginizing the default source, the legacy stock inventory. What I did is to add one check to verify if this source item was, so if I had to update, if the product is out of stock, zero quantity, and a default source is not existing. So basically we ended up fixing this in this way. And that's it. I don't know if you have any questions. Hello?
No. I'll say no questions. Doesn't sound like anyone has questions. I didn't hear any.
Okay, so I stop my share screen.
Okay, thank you, Riccardo, for your great job.
You're welcome.
And looks like our last topic today, Vladimir Podlitsky will share information about some installation, about our strategy, how to install Magento beta version, so on. Vladimir, please share. Vladimir, looks like you are muted.
Okay, do you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so as you may already know, we are not going to merge all the MSI code to Magento mainline repository, and we are going to distribute inventory models as a separate set of extensions, and to provide simple paths to simple installation of all of those models. We developed single additional tool, which is actually Composer plugin that allows to install and update all inventory models. So what this module actually do? As I already said, this is Composer plugin, which will be added as a dependency to Magento open source and Magento Commerce meta packages, and will be included in Magento 2.3. And eventually it will be included at some alpha or beta release of Magento 2.3, but for now it's is a standalone Composer package, so it's called Magento Inventory Composer Installer. And what this plugin actually do, it finds, detect is Magento already installed or not, does Magento already have predefined set of models what are enabled or disabled, and based on this information disable or enable all the models from inventory set for Magento instance. So if someone will install Magento 2.3 with fresh installation, Magento inventory models will be enabled by default. But if somebody will upgrade from Magento 2.2 or 2.1 to Magento 2.3, then inventory models will be available in source code, but will be disabled and will require explicit enabling by operating of administrator with Magento model enabled command. So this work is still in progress, but let me share some result of console output when you install in inventory models above the installed Magento. So in composer output, you will have additional information that some models are recognized as part of MSI, and you will be provided with information are these models enabled or disabled in your installation. So after this, you will be able to, if model is disabled, you will be able to go to console and enable them manually with verifying that no data corrupted. Okay, so actually, and another responsibility of this plugin is providing some meta package inside, which holds all the list of inventory models that will be shipped with Magento 2.3 release. So once we will publish this composer package at our repo magento.com composer repository, it will be enough just to require this single package, not this one, but inventory composer installer to have all the inventory models installed through the composer. So that's all.
Okay.
Some questions?
I have a couple questions, but I'll go. Someone else go first if there are other questions.
Okay, so the first question: did you say that the MSI models would not be inside of the Magento core? Will it be distributed much like B2B models? So yeah, MSI models would not be inside Magento 2 repository. But if you install Magento 2.3 with a composer, then all MSI models will be available in your installation.
Well, I started to answer that question in chat, so I want to clarify. There is, you cannot say that they will not be in core. There is a lot of confusion now between composer and Git, and many people saying that Git repository is Magento core. Git repository is not Magento core, it's just a Git repository that contains a list, a subset of Magento modules, right? The important thing for merchants is the packages that are on composer package, not in Git, and the meta package that includes Magento, right? So to answer technically, to give a technically precise answer, B2B module, MSI modules will not be in Git repository, but they will be in Magento core, which is composer Magento meta package. So that's a clarification, and I have a couple more questions.
Okay.
So first, this tool, I have a couple questions for implementation, but even before we discuss implementation, it makes sense to have such tool generic. I wouldn't put a dependency on inventory here, because if we follow this model in future, this would be the way we discussed multiple times how we will be releasing multi-source inventory, and ideally this should be the way how we will release our products in future, our breaking changes in future with parallel implementation. So this tool will make sense. It will make sense to use it in future, right? So I wouldn't call it inventory composer installer. I would think about a more generic name and not focus only on multi-source inventory, right? So multi-source inventory is the first project that we release this way, but we will want to use it in future too. Again, I don't know about a lot of details, but I would at least not call it inventory composer install if it's a tool or special plugin, right?
Okay, right. But for now, just to have simple approach to releasing and maintaining all the things, it actually have two responsibilities. One responsibility is installing all the models and disabling them for the that users that upgrade Magento, and the second responsibility is to provide the meta package, so all the people may just depend on the single composer package.
Okay,
So,
again, I don't want to dive deeply into that. We can discuss separately, but it makes sense to separate the generic part from inventory specific part. Like inventory meta package, okay, but the tool, if it's a composer plugin, and if you decide to keep it a composer plugin, it makes sense to have it generic. Other question I had is, so if I understood correctly, so here we use composer plugin to disable modules on Magento application level, right? So we just, composer packages will be installed anyway, right?
Yep.
But but Magento modules might be enabled or disabled, right?
Yes. So it works only with Magento modules and actually rely on RPTC config PHP file, and this is necessary to be fully compatible with the approach that uses Magento Cloud for installation and updates of Magento.
Okay, so in that case, if it uses Magento mechanism for disabling modules and not uses composer mechanism of just not installing modules, why do we do it? So what's the benefit of doing it on composer level as a plugin to composer, not in Magento application or configuration reader or something like that?
I understand the question. The only reason is the way how Cloud operates and updates Magento, because Clouds on the update process when new version is deployed, it's on deployment stage. It runs module enable all just to compile everything, and then disable previously disabled models. So
why can't it be Magento setup upgrade part of Magento setup upgrade command?
Because in this way, Cloud during redeployment will call Magento enable models and enable those new models that will come with upgrade. So at the point when we'll be able to run this command, Cloud tools will already enable MSI models, and why this approach with having something on Magento level is not working.
Okay, let me discuss it with Cloud teams. With Cloud team, ideally, Cloud infrastructure should not limit you in a way that you install disable models. So basically, it should not dictate at all. Let me double check that. My understanding was that it wouldn't interfere, but if you say that it interferes, that's something we should discuss.
Just call Magento enable all models before compilation and the static deployment stage, and that's why it's.
They run this command?
Yes.
Okay, let me discuss it with Andrei Kasyan. The definitely didn't run it, but okay. It sounds a bit strange to me. I'll figure out. Ideally, Cloud should not force you or enable or disable any modules, because you control code base in Cloud. But that's a separate discussion. In that case, if that is a technical reason for that, my other questions fall off.
Okay. So that's it from my side.
Thank you. So generally looks like that's all today.
Maybe Mark has some questions.
No, actually, I don't have another one. Thank you.
Here, do you have some additional updates?
No.
Okay,
So far, so good.
great. So thank you guys for attending, and see you next week. Bye.
I have one quick suggestion to. So it looks like this demo. Sometimes they go short. Sometimes we have a lot of discussions. So my only suggestion is for every week to review the agenda, and if we can see that there will be a lot of discussion, to make the demo 45 minutes or 1 hour, and that's it. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.